Every event that has ever happened, every breath ever taken, every star that ever burned, has unfolded inside something we rarely stop to question. Space and time feel so familiar, so constant, that we move through them without noticing. Yet when we slow down and listen carefully, a quiet mystery begins to surface. What if space and time are not just a backdrop for reality, but something far stranger, softer, and more elusive than we imagine? Welcome to AstraFlow. Here, science drifts like starlight, and curiosity becomes calm. Tonight, let your thoughts slow down, your breathing find its rhythm, and your mind float through wonder. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Are you lying in bed beneath the gentle glow of city lights, or resting somewhere quiet where the night feels wide and open? Perhaps you're listening with curtains drawn, or with a window cracked just enough to let the air move. Tell me in the comments. It's always peaceful to imagine the AstraFlow community scattered across the world, drifting together through the same sky. And if this calm journey brings you a sense of ease, you can gently support AstraFlow by liking this video or subscribing. It helps this little corner of the cosmos keep glowing, night after night. Now let's begin tonight's voyage into the quiet story of space-time. We often speak of space as if it were emptiness, a vast stage where planets and galaxies perform their slow dance. Time, meanwhile, feels like a steady river, carrying moments from the future into memory. Together they seem simple enough. We measure them, we schedule our lives around them, we trust them without hesitation, and yet beneath that familiarity lies one of the deepest unanswered questions in science. What really is space-time made of? This question does not rush toward an answer. It lingers, it invites patience. Everything that exists appears within space and unfolds through time, but space-time itself refuses to behave like an ordinary thing. It can stretch and bend. It can slow and accelerate. It responds to mass and energy as if it were alive, yet it has no texture we can touch, no substance we can hold. As you listen, there is nothing you need to solve, nothing to remember. This is not a puzzle to be completed, but a landscape to drift through. We will move gently, from ideas that feel familiar to thoughts that soften into mystery. Some moments will feel clear, others hazy, like stars seen through thin clouds. That is exactly where this journey lives. So let your breathing settle, let the day loosen its grip. As we explore what space-time might be and what it might never fully reveal, allow yourself to rest inside the question itself. Sometimes, the most peaceful place to be is not in the answer, but in the quiet space where wondering continues. If space and time are the stage on which everything unfolds, then asking what they're made of feels almost too simple. Simple questions often hide the deepest depths. We ask what a chair is made of, or a cloud, or the air we breathe, and answers come easily. Wood and fabric, water droplets, invisible gases. But when we turn the same question towards space and time, the answer grows quiet. They do not respond the way ordinary things do. We move through space without resistance. We move through time without choice. Both feel constant, dependable, almost invisible in their reliability. Yet the moment we ask what they truly are, they begin to slip from our grasp. Are they substances like water or stone? Are they forces like gravity or magnetism? Or are they something else entirely? Something that only exists because other things exist within them. This is where science slows down, not because it has failed, but because it has reached a gentle edge. Our best theories describe how space-time behaves with astonishing accuracy. They tell us how it bends near massive objects, how time stretches when things move quickly, how light traces paths that reveal an unseen geometry. But describing behavior is not the same as describing essence. Knowing what something does is different from knowing what it is. Imagine standing beside a quiet river at night. You can see how the water flows around stones, how it reflects the moon, how it carries leaves downstream. But if you were asked what the river is made of, you might hesitate. Is it the water alone, the riverbed, the motion itself? Space-time presents a similar puzzle. It feels less like an object and more like an ongoing relationship, a pattern of distances and durations that only make sense when things are happening. This question has followed physicists for generations, and it remains unresolved not because it is poorly formed, but because it may be pointing beyond the way we usually think. Space-time might not be built from smaller pieces the way matter is. It might not have components at all. It could be more like a rule, or a structure, or a quiet agreement between events about how far apart they are and when they occur. As you listen, there is no need to hold this idea tightly. Let it rest lightly in your mind, like a thought floating on the surface of sleep. The purpose here is not to pin space-time down, but to become comfortable with the fact that something so fundamental can remain mysterious. In that mystery, there is no urgency, no failure, only a reminder that the universe is deeper than our questions and patient enough to let us wander slowly. There is a strange moment in science when understanding grows so precise that certainty begins to dissolve. Space-time lives in that moment. We can calculate its behaviour with extraordinary accuracy. We can predict how planets orbit, how satellites keep time, how light curves its path across the universe. And yet, the more clearly we describe what space-time does, the less confident we become about what it is. Knowledge expands, and with it, a quiet humility. For a long time, space and time felt like obvious facts of existence. Space was where things were. Time was when things happened. These ideas worked well enough for daily life, for navigation, for building cities and telling stories. Even now, they still serve us. But when we listen closely to the universe, especially at its largest and smallest scales, these familiar ideas begin to soften like edges blurred by mist. Science has not failed us here. In fact, it has done the opposite. It has shown us the limits of our intuition. The equations describe space-time as dynamic, flexible, responsive. Space can stretch. Time can slow. Distances and durations are not fixed absolutes, but depend on motion, gravity, and perspective. This is not confusion. It is precision revealing complexity. There is a gentle discomfort that comes with this realization. We like solid foundations. We like to know what the ground beneath our feet is made of. Space-time, however, refuses to be solid in the way we expect. It behaves more like a pattern than a substance, more like a set of relationships than a material. When mass and energy are present, space-time responds. When they move, it adjusts. When they vanish, it remains, quiet and undefined. This is when knowing begins to feel like not knowing at all. The closer we look, the more space-time resembles a question rather than an answer. It invites us to rethink what it means for something to exist. Perhaps not everything that is real needs to be made of parts. Perhaps some things are real because they connect other things, because they allow events to unfold and moments to touch. As you settle deeper into rest, let this uncertainty feel spacious rather than troubling. There is no need to resolve it tonight. The universe does not rush its explanations, and neither should we. In this soft place between understanding and mystery, the mind can relax. It is enough to know that even our most trusted ideas can grow strange when we listen carefully. And sometimes that strangeness is where the deepest calm begins. For most of human history, space and time lived apart in our understanding. Space was the quiet container, a vast openness where mountains stood still and stars held their places. Time was the invisible clock, ticking forward at the same pace for everyone, everywhere. This separation felt natural, almost comforting. You could point to where something was, and you could mark when it happened, and the two never seemed to interfere with each other. In everyday life, this picture works beautifully. A room does not change its size when you walk across it. A minute feels like a minute whether you're standing still or moving. These experiences trained our intuition. shaping the way we think long before science began asking deeper questions. Space felt rigid. Time felt universal. They seemed like the most reliable aspects of reality, always there, always the same. But this sense of certainty came from living slowly on a small planet far from extremes. When scientists began to look beyond ordinary speeds and ordinary masses, cracks appeared in this simple picture. Space and time started behaving less like fixed stages and more like participants in the story. Measurements that once seemed absolute began to depend on how fast you were moving, or how close you were to something massive. The separation between space and time grew thinner, quieter, less certain. It is important to notice how gentle this shift is. Nothing dramatic breaks. No familiar experience disappears. Instead, the old ideas slowly lose their completeness. They still work in calm, everyday conditions, just as a map works well for a single town. But when the journey grows larger, when the train stretches toward the horizon, the map must change. Space and time, once drawn on separate pages, begin to overlap. As you listen, allow this transition to feel slow and natural. There is no need to abandon intuition, only to soften it. The universe is not correcting us for being wrong. It is inviting us to see more, and that invitation does not arrive with urgency. It arrives quietly, like dusk replacing afternoon, almost unnoticed until the light has fully changed. When space and time finally came together, it did not happen with noise or spectacle. There was no sudden collapse of old ideas, no dramatic declaration. Instead, there was a quiet realization that space and time were not separate threads after all, but strands of a single fabric woven together. This fabric came to be known as space-time, not as a new substance, but as a new way of seeing. In this view, space cannot be described without time, and time cannot be described without space. Where something is, and when it happens, become parts of the same description. Motion through space changes the experience of time. The presence of mass changes the shape of space. Everything is connected gently and continuously. Nothing stands completely alone. What makes this unification feel so calm is that it does not fight our experience. It simply deepens it. We still walk across rooms, we still watch clocks tick, but beneath those familiar motions lies a subtle flexibility. Space-time is not rigid. It can stretch and curve, responding to the contents of the universe like a surface responding to weight. This response is not forceful. It is natural, almost effortless. Imagine laying a blanket across a bed. When nothing rests on it, it lies flat and still. When you place something on it, the fabric curves, not because it chooses to, but because that is what fabric does. Space-time behaves in a similar way, though the image is only a guide for the mind. Mass and energy shape the geometry around them, and objects follow the gentle paths laid out by that geometry. There is something deeply restful about this idea. Motion no longer requires constant pushing or pulling. Falling becomes a kind of drifting. Orbits become quiet paths rather than endless struggles. The universe moves the way water flows downhill, not because it is forced, but because the shape of the landscape invites it. As you rest with this thought, let it settle without effort. Space-time does not rush, and neither do we. It simply exists as a continuous whole, holding distance and duration together in a single silent structure. In understanding this, even softly, the mind can relax into a sense of connection, where nothing is isolated and everything unfolds in gentle relation to everything else. When space-time begins to feel abstract, the human mind reaches for images. We imagine something we can almost touch, something familiar enough to rest our thoughts upon. This is where the idea of space-time as a fabric quietly enters, a smooth surface, stretched wide, responding gently when something presses upon it. The image is calming, intuitive, and easy to hold, especially when the mind is already drifting towards sleep. This fabric is not meant to be real in a literal sense. There are no threads, no texture, no hidden weave waiting to be discovered under a microscope. Instead, it is a way of translating mathematics into feeling. It allows us to sense how mass influences the paths of objects, how motion follows curves instead of straight lines. Like many metaphors in science, it exists to guide imagination, not to define reality. What makes this image so powerful is its simplicity. When something heavy rests on fabric, the fabric curves. When something light moves nearby, it follows the curve without being pushed or pulled. In this way, gravity becomes less like a force and more like a gentle invitation. Objects move as they do because space-time is shaped that way. Nothing is shouting commands. Nothing is being dragged. Everything simply follows the quiet contours that already exist. But as comforting as this image is, it has its limits. Real space-time does not sit inside a larger space the way fabric sits on a bed. It does not bend downward into anything. The curvature happens within space-time itself, not into some hidden direction beyond it. This is where the metaphor begins to soften, like a dream image that fades when you look at it too closely. Still, there is value in letting the image linger. It gives the mind a place to rest, a way to feel structure without strain. As you listen, you don't need to correct the metaphor or push past it. You can simply allow it to float in your awareness, knowing it is a guide, not a destination. Space-time, whatever it truly is, seems to prefer gentleness. It does not snap or resist. It responds smoothly, continuously, without sharp edges. And in imagining it as something soft and responsive, we align our own thinking with its character. Thought becomes less rigid. Understanding becomes less demanding. The mind can relax into the idea that not everything needs to be sharply defined to be deeply real. Once the image of curved space-time settles in, a quiet question naturally arises. If space-time bends, what does it bend into? The question sounds simple, almost childlike, yet it has echoed through physics for more than a century. It is the kind of question that doesn't demand an answer, but invites contemplation, like watching ripples spread across water and wondering where the surface truly ends. In everyday experience, bending usually implies an outside. A sheet bends into the air. A branch bends against the wind. There is always something beyond the object that gives bending its meaning. But space-time does not sit inside a larger container. There is no external space waiting to receive its curves. The bending happens internally, defined by distances and times themselves. This is where intuition gently loosens its grip. Curvature in space-time is not about shape in a higher dimension we can point to. It is about how paths change. Lines that once seemed straight slowly drift toward one another. Angles behave differently. The rules of geometry shift quietly and consistently. Bending, in this sense, is not a movement into something else, but a change in relationships. Imagine walking across a landscape at night. You cannot see the terrain clearly, but your steps subtly change. Paths feel longer or shorter. Directions feel slightly off. You sense the shape of the land not by seeing it from above, but by moving through it. Space-time curvature is like that. Objects do not perceive bending from the outside. They experience it by following the paths available to them. This idea removes the need for an answer to the question of into what. There may be no into at all. Space-time bends by redefining what straight means, what near and far mean, what before and after mean. It bends by changing the rules softly, without announcement. As you rest with this thought, allow the question to remain open. There is no pressure to resolve it. Some questions are not doors to be opened, but windows to sit beside. In the quiet of not knowing, the mind finds space to breathe. And in that space, understanding becomes less about holding answers and more about gently following the curves of wonder wherever they lead. For a long time, gravity was imagined as a quiet force reaching across space, pulling objects toward one another. The Earth pulls the Moon, the Sun pulls the planets. This picture feels intuitive, almost comforting, because it mirrors everyday experience. We pull doors open, we pull chairs closer, we pull blankets over ourselves at night. But space-time offers a gentler story, one that asks us to let go of pulling altogether. In the language of space-time, gravity is not a tug or a command, it is a shape. Massive objects change the geometry around them, and other objects simply move along the paths that geometry provides. Nothing reaches out, nothing demands motion. Instead, motion unfolds naturally, like water flowing downhill, because the land is shaped that way. The flow is not forced, it is invited. This idea becomes easier to feel when we think about free fall. When an astronaut drifts around Earth, floating quietly inside a spacecraft, they are not escaping gravity. They're following it perfectly. They feel weightless, not because gravity is absent, but because they are moving in harmony with space-time's curves. There is no resistance, no strain. Falling, in this sense, is the most effortless state of motion. Space-time prefers ease. Objects that are not pushed or held simply follow its contours, tracing paths that look curved from the outside but feel straight from within. These paths are called geodesics, though the word matters less than the feeling behind it. Imagine walking without needing to choose each step, guided gently by the slope beneath your feet. Gravity becomes less like a force acting upon you, and more like a quiet suggestion you naturally follow. As you rest with this idea, notice how calming it is to remove struggle from motion. The universe does not constantly push itself forward. It does not fight to keep things moving. It allows motion to happen because of how it is shaped. In that sense, gravity is not an act, but a condition, a background softness that holds everything together without effort. Let this understanding settle slowly. There is no need to picture equations or diagrams. Simply feel the idea that falling is drifting, that motion can be effortless, and that even the largest structures in the universe move without strain. In that gentleness, the mind finds permission to release its own tension, to follow the curves laid out by rest and gravity alike. We tend to trust clocks completely. They tick steadily, marking seconds with unwavering confidence. A second feels like a second everywhere, all the time, or so it seems. But space-time tells a softer story, one where clocks can disagree without error, where time itself adapts to motion and gravity in a calm, consistent way. When objects move very fast or rest near something massive, time changes its pace. Clocks in these different conditions tick at different rates, not because they are broken, but because they are honest. Each clock measures time along its own path through space-time, and those paths are not identical. They curve and stretch in different ways, shaping the rhythm of each passing moment. This idea can feel unsettling at first, as if reality itself were losing its stability. But there is no chaos here. There is only perspective. Just as two travellers taking different roads will measure different distances, two clocks following different space-time paths will measure different durations. Time does not argue with itself, it adapts. What makes this comforting is the consistency beneath the variation. The rules never change. Space-time treats all clocks the same way, responding gently to speed and mass. The differences are predictable, measurable, and beautifully precise. Even satellites orbiting Earth must account for these effects, adjusting their clocks so that navigation systems remain accurate. Without spacetime's flexible timing, even everyday technologies would quietly drift out of sync. Yet beyond practicality, there is something poetic here. Time is not a rigid river carrying everyone at the same speed. It is more like a landscape of gentle slopes, where moments stretch and compress depending on how you move through them. Your experience of time is personal, shaped by your path, your motion, your closeness to things that matter. As you listen, allow this idea to soften your sense of urgency. There is no single tempo you must follow. The universe itself allows variation, patience, and rest. Each moment unfolds at its own pace, and none of them are wrong. In accepting that time can flow differently, the mind finds permission to slow down, to let the night carry it at exactly the speed it needs. Among all the things that move through the universe, light is the most patient storyteller. It does not hurry, and it does not pause. It simply travels, tracing paths through space-time that reveal its structure without words. Wherever light goes, it carries information about distance and duration, about how space is shaped and how time flows along the way. Light does not experience time the way we do. From its own perspective, the journey from a distant star to your eyes happens without delay. There is no waiting, no passage of moments. Yet for us, that same light may have travelled for millions of years, crossing vast stretches of space-time before arriving quietly in the night sky. This difference is not a contradiction. It is a reflection of how space-time treats different paths differently. What makes light so special is its role as a constant reference. No matter how fast you move, no matter where you are, light always moves at the same speed relative to you. This simple rule shapes everything else. It ties space and time together so tightly that changing one inevitably affects the other. Distances adjust, durations stretch. Space-time reorganizes itself gently to preserve this calm consistency. When astronomers observe distant galaxies, they're not just seeing objects. They're reading space-time's history written in light. Each photon carries a record of the conditions it passed through, the curves it followed, the expansions it endured. Light does not announce these stories. It simply arrives, and if we listen carefully, the stories are there. As you rest, imagine light moving through the universe like a soft breath, filling space without effort. It does not resist space-time's shape, it reveals it. In following light's path, the mind learns to move gently as well, without pushing, without rushing, trusting that clarity can arrive quietly, exactly when it is ready. It may seem strange that in a universe full of motion, one speed remains unchanged. Objects speed up and slow down, planets accelerate and drift, even time itself can stretch and compress. Yet the speed of light remains the same, steady and unyielding, like a quiet rhythm beneath all movement. This constancy is not imposed. It emerges naturally from the structure of space-time itself. No matter how fast you travel, light will always move away from you at the same speed. Space-time adjusts to make this possible. Lengths contract, time slows. These changes are not flaws or illusions. They are space-time's way of keeping its deepest rule intact. The universe reshapes itself gently so that light can remain what it is. There is something deeply calming about this idea. In the midst of endless change, one relationship remains stable. Light does not compete. It does not rush ahead or fall behind. It simply moves as it always has, marking the boundary between cause and effect, between what can influence what. Nothing travels faster, not because it is forbidden, but because space-time itself offers no paths beyond that speed. This limit is not restrictive, it is protective. It gives the universe coherence. It ensures that events unfold in an orderly way that causes precede effects, that stories have sequence and meaning. Without this steady pace, reality would blur into confusion. With it, space-time maintains a quiet harmony. As you settle deeper into rest, let this constancy feel reassuring. Even as thoughts drift and moments stretch, there is an underlying steadiness holding everything together. Light moves on, unchanged, and space-time flows around it, adjusting softly, endlessly. In that steady motion, the mind can release its need to keep track, trusting that the universe knows how to keep time all by itself. When we slow our thinking enough, something subtle begins to shift. Instead of seeing the universe as a collection of objects, we begin to notice moments, not things, but happenings. In the language of space-time, what truly matters is not just where something is, or what it is made of, but when and where something occurs together. These pairings are called events, and they are the quiet building blocks of reality. An event is simple: a flash of light, a heartbeat, a particle arriving somewhere. Each one is defined by a place and a time inseparably linked. Space-time does not ask what caused the event or what it means. It simply provides the structure in which the event can exist. When we describe the universe this way, it becomes less like a warehouse full of objects and more like a story unfolding moment by moment. This shift in perspective is gentle but profound. Objects feel solid and persistent. Events feel fleeting, yet they carry all the information we can ever know. A star exploding is not a thing, but a sequence of events spread across space-time. Your own life, too, can be seen as a long chain of events, softly connected, each one flowing into the next without sharp boundaries. Thinking in terms of events allows space-time to feel more natural. It is no longer a container holding objects, but a web that relates moments to one another. Distance becomes the separation between events. Duration becomes the spacing between them in time. Nothing needs to exist on its own. Everything gains meaning through connection. As you listen, let this idea loosen the way you picture the world. You do not need to hold on to solid forms. You can allow reality to feel like a sequence of gentle appearances, each one briefly present, then passing into memory. In this view, space-time is not something heavy or rigid. It is light, relational, and quietly accommodating, offering a place for moments to arise and fade without effort. If we follow this idea a little further, the universe begins to look less like a collection of enduring things and more like a tapestry of moments. Each moment appears, connects, and then gives way to the next. Space-time becomes the pattern that orders these moments, not by force, but by consistency. It tells each event how it relates to every other event, near or far, past or future. In this view, permanence is an illusion created by repetition. A table feels solid because countless similar events occur in the same region of space-time. A mountain feels timeless because its changes unfold slowly across vast durations. But at its core, even the most stable structure is a flow of events, gently arranged by space-time's rules. There is something deeply calming about seeing reality this way. Nothing needs to last forever to be meaningful. Each moment is complete simply by occurring. Space-time does not demand endurance. It allows presence. It allows things to happen, and then to rest in the fact that they have happened. Your own experience fits naturally into this picture. Each breath is an event. Each thought is an event. Even the feeling of listening right now is a moment unfolding within space-time, connected to countless others that came before it and will follow after. There is no pressure to hold on to any of them. They arrive, they pass, and space-time holds their place without judgment. As you drift deeper into rest, let the idea of a universe made of moments feel reassuring. You do not need to grasp the whole structure. You only need to be present for this one moment, and then the next, as they gently appear and fade. Space-time supports this flow effortlessly, and in doing so, it invites the mind to release its grip, to rest comfortably inside the ongoing rhythm of becoming. Space-time is often described as having 4 dimensions, 3 of space and 1 of time. Yet in everyday life, only 3 of these feel tangible. We can move left and right, forward and back, up and down. Time, by contrast, does not feel like a direction we can choose. It feels more like a current carrying us along. This difference is not an illusion, but a feature of how space-time meets human experience. The 3 dimensions of space allow freedom of movement. You can pause, turn, or retrace your steps. Time does not offer that same flexibility. You cannot stop it, reverse it, or step sideways out of it. You experience it as a steady unfolding, one moment giving way to the next. Space-time allows this asymmetry gently, without explanation, simply as part of its structure. Physics treats time and space as closely linked, yet our bodies and minds experience them differently. This may be because we are built from processes that move forward in time. Memory accumulates, change leaves traces, causes come before effects. These patterns give time a direction, while space remains open and reversible. Space-time itself does not insist on this feeling. It arises naturally from the way matter and energy behave within it. Imagine reading a book. You can move your eyes across the page in many directions, but the story itself only unfolds forward. The pages exist all at once, yet your experience of them has order. Space-time may be similar. All moments may exist within its structure, while conscious experience moves through them sequentially, like a quiet reader progressing line by line. As you rest with this idea, notice how natural it feels to let time carry you. There is no need to resist it or control it. Space-time provides the flow, and awareness rides gently along. In accepting that time feels different because it is experienced differently, the mind can relax. You're not failing to grasp a dimension. You're simply inhabiting it in the way living things do, one calm moment at a time. Among all the features of space-time, one stands out as quietly undeniable. Time seems to have a direction. We remember the past, not the future. We watch ice melt, not unmelt. Smoke spreads into the air, never gathering itself back into a flame. This one-way flow is called the arrow of time, and it shapes nearly every human experience, even though space-time itself does not insist on it. At a fundamental level, many physical laws do not care which way time points. They work just as well forward as backward. Yet the world we inhabit tells a different story. Disorder tends to increase. Structures slowly break down. Differences smooth out. This gradual spreading, often called entropy, gives time its sense of direction. It is not imposed by space-time as a rule, but emerges from how complex systems evolve within it. Think of a quiet room at night. When left undisturbed, sounds fade. Heat spreads evenly. Motion settles into stillness. These changes all move in the same temporal direction, gently reinforcing the feeling that time flows forward. Space-time allows all of this without preference, but the universe fills it in a way that gives time its arrow. What makes this comforting is that the arrow of time does not rush, it does not push, it simply allows change to accumulate. Each moment leaves a trace, and those traces become memory, history, and experience. Without this gentle accumulation, nothing could be learned, nothing could be remembered, and no story could unfold. As you listen, notice how the arrow of time carries you without effort. You don't need to decide which moment comes next. Space-time and entropy together take care of that. All you need to do is rest inside the flow, letting moments pass naturally, one after another, like waves that arrive, dissolve, and leave the surface calm behind them. Memory is where space-time touches something deeply human. It is not just a record of events, but a feeling of direction, a sense that moments have passed and left something behind. Without memory, time would lose its texture. Everything would feel endlessly present, without before or after. Memory gives time depth. Each memory is a small imprint left by events as they unfold in space-time. It is not the past itself, but a trace of how the past shaped you. In this way, memory is not separate from the arrow of time. It is one of its most intimate expressions. As events move forward, memory accumulates, quietly reinforcing the sense that time flows one way. This does not mean memory is perfect or complete. It fades, shifts, and softens. Details blur, feelings change. Yet even in its imperfection, memory performs a gentle task. It connects moments, allowing experience to feel continuous rather than fragmented. Space-time provides the structure for events, and memory stitches some of them together into meaning. There is something soothing about this relationship. You do not need to remember everything. Space-time does not ask for perfect records. It simply allows events to occur, and memory keeps what it needs. The rest can fade without harm. Letting go is part of the process. As you drift closer to sleep, notice how memory loosens its grip. The day's details begin to blur, the order of events softens. This is not loss, it is rest. In this gentle fading, the arrow of time continues quietly on, carrying you forward, while memory settles into stillness. Space-time holds both motion and forgetting with equal ease, and in that balance, the mind is free to let go. It is easy to imagine space-time only when something happens within it. A planet curves space. A clock slows near a massive star. Light bends as it passes by. But what about space-time when nothing is happening? What does it mean for space-time to exist at rest, without motion, without matter, without events drawing attention to its presence? In this quiet thought experiment, space-time does not disappear. It does not collapse or fade. Instead, it becomes subtle. Without mass to curve it or light to trace it, space-time remains as a calm structure of possible distances and possible durations. It is like a room before anyone enters, or a night sky before the first star appears. Empty but not absent. This idea can feel strange because we often define things by what they do. When space-time is not bending, stretching, or guiding motion, it seems harder to describe, yet its stillness may be just as real as its activity. Even in the deepest cosmic voids, far from galaxies and stars, space-time quietly maintains the relationships that allow anything to appear at all. There is a peaceful parallel here with rest itself. When the body stops moving, it does not cease to exist. It simply enters a quieter mode. Muscles soften, breathing slows, awareness remains gentle and open. Space-time at rest may be similar, not empty of meaning, but free of disturbance. As you listen, imagine space-time as a vast, calm surface, undisturbed by weight or motion. No ripples, no curves, just a quiet readiness. In that stillness there is no demand, no direction, no urgency. It is a place of pure allowance, where events could happen, but do not need to. Let this idea settle into your own sense of rest. You do not need to be active to be present. Like space-time itself, you can simply be. The universe does not require constant motion, and neither does the mind. Sometimes the deepest reality reveals itself not in movement, but in the gentle peace of stillness. When space-time feels smooth and continuous, it is tempting to imagine it as perfectly calm at every scale. But as science looks closer and closer, approaching the smallest measurable distances, a new possibility begins to whisper. What if space-time is not entirely smooth? What if beneath the calm surface there is a subtle texture, too fine to see, too small to feel? At the quantum scale, the universe behaves differently. Energy flickers, particles appear and vanish. Certainty gives way to probability. In this realm, the idea of a perfectly smooth space-time begins to blur. Some physicists wonder whether space-time itself might be made of tiny, discrete elements, not unlike pixels in an image or notes in a melody. This does not mean space-time becomes chaotic. Even the most delicate music follows structure. The whispers beneath space-time would not roar or disrupt. They would hum quietly, shaping the deep foundation upon which smooth space-time emerges. Just as a calm ocean surface can hide countless small waves beneath, space-time may appear continuous while resting on something finely structured below. What is important here is not the details, but the mood of the idea. At the deepest level, reality may be gentle but restless, calm but alive with possibility. Space-time could be both stable and dynamic, both smooth in experience and intricate in origin. These two qualities do not conflict. They complement each other. As you relax, let the thought of quantum whispers feel soothing rather than unsettling. The universe does not need to be simple to be peaceful. Complexity can exist without noise. Beneath the steady flow of time and space, there may be a quiet dance too small to notice, supporting everything without drawing attention to itself. You do not need to follow this dance or understand its steps. It is enough to know that beneath the calm you feel, there may be deeper layers of calm still. Space-time holds them all, from the largest cosmic arcs to the faintest quantum murmurs, and in that layered quiet, rest becomes natural. Once the idea of quantum whispers settles in, a quiet question naturally follows. Is space-time smooth all the way down, or does it have a finest grain, a smallest unit beyond which the idea of distance no longer makes sense? This is known as the granularity question, and it rests gently at the edge of modern physics, unanswered but deeply intriguing. In everyday life, smoothness often hides structure. Sand looks continuous from afar, yet up close it is made of countless grains. A calm voice sounds steady, yet it is shaped by tiny vibrations of air. Space-time may be similar. From our human scale, it feels seamless and flowing, but at unimaginably small scales, it may resolve into discrete pieces, each one too small to notice, yet together forming the fabric of reality. This possibility does not disturb space-time's calm nature. Even if space-time is granular, the grains would be so small that their presence would blur into smoothness at every scale we experience. Just as individual pixels disappear when you step back from a screen, the tiny structure of space-time would vanish into continuity, leaving only flow and connection behind. What makes this idea comforting is that it preserves order. Granularity does not mean randomness. It suggests that space-time may have a fundamental pattern, a quiet rhythm underlying everything. The universe would not be built on uncertainty alone, but on a subtle structure that allows complexity to emerge without noise. As you listen, let this question remain unanswered. It does not ask for resolution tonight. It invites curiosity without urgency. Whether space-time is smooth or granular, it continues to do its work effortlessly, allowing moments to unfold and rest to arrive. Sometimes the most peaceful questions are the ones we allow to stay open. When physicists speak of the smallest meaningful distances and durations, they often refer to what are called the Planck scales. These are not places we can visit or moments we can experience. They are limits, boundaries beyond which our familiar ideas of space and time begin to lose their clarity. Below these scales, distance and duration may no longer behave as we expect, or even exist in the same way at all. The Planck length is unimaginably small, far beyond anything we could ever measure directly. The Planck time is equally brief, a fraction of a second so tiny that the idea of before and after starts to blur. These scales do not describe what space-time is made of, but they hint at where our current understanding gently fades. There is something humbling about these limits. They remind us that knowledge has horizons, just like the universe itself. We can approach them, describe their effects, and sense their presence, but we cannot yet cross them with certainty. Space-time at these depths becomes less like a smooth stage and more like a suggestion, a possibility rather than a defined structure. As you rest with this thought, allow it to feel calming rather than frustrating. Limits are not failures. They are resting places for curiosity. They tell us where it is okay to stop pushing and start wondering softly. The universe does not demand that we know everything. It offers just enough understanding to inspire awe, and enough mystery to allow the mind to relax. Tonight, you do not need to travel to the smallest scales. You can simply let the idea of them drift by, like distant stars barely visible at the edge of sight. Space-time holds these depths quietly, and it holds you too, here at a much gentler scale where rest and stillness are always within reach. As the question of smaller scales fades into the background, another idea drifts quietly into view. What if space-time is not made of substance at all? What if, at its deepest level, it is made of information? Not information in the everyday sense of words or numbers, but information as relationships, as distinctions between what is connected and what is not. In this view, space-time becomes less like a material and more like gentle bookkeeping. It keeps track of which events can influence each other, which moments are close, which are far apart, which come before and which cannot. Distance becomes a measure of connection. Time becomes an ordering of change. Nothing solid is required, only structure. This idea may feel abstract, but it carries a surprising softness. Information does not need weight or texture. It exists quietly, shaping possibilities without effort. A melody exists not because of the air it moves through, but because of the relationships between notes. Space-time, seen this way, could be a kind of cosmic melody, defined by how events relate rather than by what they're made of. What makes this perspective calming is that it removes the need for a hidden substance beneath reality. There is no final layer we must dig down to. Instead, there is pattern, order, and consistency. The universe holds together because its relationships hold together. Space-time becomes the calm logic that allows everything else to unfold. As you listen, let this idea rest gently in your awareness. You do not need to decide whether it is true. It is enough to feel how natural it is to imagine reality as something relational rather than material. In that imagination, the universe feels lighter, less rigid, and more accommodating. Like information itself, space-time may simply be the quiet arrangement that makes experience possible. If space-time can be thought of as information, another image begins to shimmer at the edges of thought. What if the full depth of the universe is encoded on its boundaries? This is the essence of the holographic idea, a suggestion that the three-dimensional world we experience could arise from information stored on a distant surface. A hologram holds an entire image within a thin layer. Each part contains the whole, not as a picture, but as encoded relationships. When light passes through it, depth appears. Similarly, space-time itself might emerge from simpler information arranged at its edges, unfolding into the rich interior we inhabit. This is not something to visualize too clearly. It is more like a dream image, meant to be felt rather than seen. The idea is not that the universe is an illusion, but that depth may arise naturally from simplicity. What feels vast and layered could be supported by something quietly minimal. There is comfort in this thought. It suggests that complexity does not require heaviness. The universe does not need thick foundations to exist. It can arise gracefully from subtle rules, from information gently organized. Space-time, in this sense, is not built upward, but unfolds outward. As you drift deeper into rest, allow the holographic idea to soften into the background. You do not need to understand it fully. Like a reflection on water, it does not ask to be grasped. It only invites a sense of wonder, a quiet appreciation that reality may be far more elegant than it appears, and far more gentle than we ever imagined. If space-time is shaped by relationships and information, then the universe begins to feel less like a machine and more like a story. Not a story written all at once, but one that unfolds event by event, moment by moment. Each event adds a line. Each connection provides context. Space-time becomes the quiet grammar that allows the story to make sense. In a story, meaning does not come from isolated words. It comes from how words follow one another, how scenes connect, how earlier moments shape what comes later. Space-time may work in the same way. Events gain significance not because of what they are alone, but because of where they sit in relation to other events. Near and far, before and after, cause and effect. These are the threads that weave the narrative of reality. This perspective gently shifts how we think about existence. The universe does not need a single, fixed substance to hold it together. It needs continuity. It needs order. It needs a way for moments to follow one another without contradiction. Space-time provides this quietly, without announcing itself, allowing the story to flow naturally. There is something comforting about living inside a story rather than inside a mechanism. Stories are allowed to breathe. They contain pauses, silences, and moments of stillness. Not everything needs to happen at once. Space-time too allows for gaps, for waiting, for gentle transitions. Nothing is rushed. As you listen, imagine your own experience as a small part of this larger story. You do not need to know the beginning or the ending. You are simply present for this chapter, this moment, this quiet awareness. Space-time holds it all together, ensuring that the story unfolds smoothly without strain. In that assurance, the mind can rest, trusting that it does not need to control the narrative to belong within it. Among all the places in the universe, black holes reveal space-time most clearly by pushing it to its limits. They are not violent in their nature, despite their reputation. They are simply regions where space-time curves so deeply that familiar paths close in on themselves. In this extreme quiet, space-time shows us how flexible it truly is. Near a black hole, time slows gently. Paths that once led outward begin to turn inward. Light itself follows the curves, not because it is pulled, but because space-time has reshaped the meaning of direction. These effects are not signs of chaos. They are signs of consistency. Space-time responding exactly as its rules allow, even under the most intense conditions. Black holes act like mirrors, reflecting back our assumptions about reality. They ask us what happens when space and time are stretched beyond comfort, beyond familiarity. At their edges, called horizons, information seems to pause. From the outside, events slow and fade. From within, time continues without drama. Space-time allows both perspectives to coexist without conflict. There is a quiet humility in this. Even at its most extreme, the universe does not break its own rules. It simply reveals them more clearly. Black holes are not monsters. They are teachers, showing us how space-time behaves when asked to do the most it can. As you settle into rest, let the image of a black hole feel calm rather than frightening. Imagine it as a deep stillness, a place where motion slows and silence deepens. In that extreme quiet, space-time reflects its true nature, not as something harsh or violent, but as something endlessly patient, holding even the most intense events within a gentle, consistent order. At the edge of a black hole lies something called a horizon. It is not a wall, not a surface you could touch. It is simply a boundary in space-time, a quiet line beyond which events can no longer send messages outward. From afar, it looks like a place where time slows almost to a stop. From within, it feels like nothing special at all. Space-time allows both views to be true at the same time. Horizons are gentle reminders that knowledge has limits shaped by structure, not by secrecy. Nothing is being hidden on purpose. The universe is not withholding information. It is simply arranged in such a way that some paths of influence cannot cross certain boundaries. Space-time defines what can be known and when, without judgment or intention. This idea reaches far beyond black holes. Every observer lives inside horizons of one kind or another. There are regions of the universe whose light has not yet reached us, and may never do so. Their events are real, unfolding quietly, even if they remain forever outside our awareness. Space-time holds them with the same care it holds everything else. There is something deeply calming in accepting this. You do not need to witness everything for it to exist. You do not need access to every interior to feel complete. The universe is allowed to have private places, just as the mind is allowed to have quiet corners untouched by thought. As you rest, imagine horizons not as barriers, but as soft edges of perception. They mark where knowing gently fades into not knowing. Beyond them, space-time continues its work, steady and untroubled, and within them, you are free to relax, knowing that it is enough to experience what reaches you, without reaching for what lies beyond. Space-time does not only curve around objects. On the larger scales, it stretches. Galaxies drift apart not because they are moving through space, but because space itself is expanding between them. This expansion is not a sudden burst or a forceful push. It is slow, patient, and universal. like a breath taken by the cosmos over billions of years. When we picture this expansion, it helps to release the idea of a center. There is no single point from which everything moves away. Every region of space-time stretches equally. From any galaxy, all others appear to recede. This is not motion through space, but motion of space, a subtle distinction that reveals how active space-time truly is. What makes this idea peaceful is its gentleness. Expansion does not tear structures apart locally. Atoms remain intact. Solar systems remain bound. Even galaxies hold together. Space-time stretches mostly where it is already empty, allowing vast distances to grow quietly without disturbance. As you listen, imagine the universe expanding like a slow, silent breath, taken so gradually that no one place feels it directly. There is no urgency, no strain, just a continuous opening, making room for future moments to unfold. In that cosmic breathing, space-time shows another side of its nature, not only shaping motion and time, but creating space itself, calmly and endlessly. When we look out into the deep night, galaxies appear like distant islands of light, slowly drifting away from one another. It is tempting to imagine them moving through space, travelling outward like boats on a dark sea. But space-time tells a gentler story. The galaxies are not racing away, they are being carried. They ride the quiet flow of expanding space itself. From within any one galaxy, the view is the same. All others seem to recede, not because of an explosion or a push, but because the distances between them are growing. Space-time stretches evenly, patiently, without favour. No galaxy sits at the centre of this motion. Each one feels as though it is still, while the universe around it slowly opens. There is something deeply restful about this image. Nothing is trying to escape, nothing is being chased away. The expansion is not an act of separation, but of allowance. Space-time makes room. It creates distance gently, the way silence grows between fading sounds. The galaxies follow naturally without effort, without resistance. This flow does not disrupt the quiet order within galaxies themselves. Stars continue to orbit. Planets continue their steady paths. Life, where it exists, continues to unfold at its own pace. The expansion happens on scales so vast and slow that it feels almost timeless. Space-time is capable of holding both intimacy and immensity at once. As you listen, let yourself imagine drifting along with this cosmic flow. There is no destination to reach, no speed to maintain. You're simply being carried, supported by the gentle stretching of the universe. In that motion without urgency, the mind can loosen its need to arrive anywhere at all. When we follow the expansion of space-time backward, we arrive at a moment often called the beginning, the Big Bang. It is easy to imagine this as an explosion at a point in space, but that image quietly misleads. The beginning of the universe was not an event that happened somewhere. It was an event that happened everywhere at once. At that early moment, space itself was smaller, denser, more compact. As space-time expanded, it carried everything with it. There was no empty space waiting to be filled, no outside region beyond the universe. The expansion was the creation of distance itself, unfolding evenly in all directions without a boundary. This makes the idea of an edge or a centre unnecessary. The universe does not expand into anything, it expands as itself. Space-time grows not by moving outward, but by redefining what outward means. Distances increase because the structure that defines distance is stretching. There is a quiet comfort in this. The beginning of space-time was not a violent rupture, but a gentle unfolding from extreme closeness. Even the earliest moments were governed by the same calm consistency that shapes the universe today. Change did not arrive as chaos, it arrived as expansion. As you rest with this thought, let go of the need to picture a beginning as a place. Think of it instead as a moment when everything was near, and then slowly learned how to be far apart. Space-time did not rush this process. It allowed it to happen gradually, patiently, making room for stars, for galaxies, and eventually for moments like this one where you can listen, breathe, and drift towards sleep. When we ask what came before the beginning of space-time, language itself begins to soften. The word before quietly assumes that time already exists. But if time is part of space-time, then asking what came before it may be like asking what is north of the North Pole. The question is natural, yet it may not point anywhere real. In this sense, the beginning of space-time is not a moment preceded by others. It is the place where moments themselves begin. Cause and effect, earlier and later, waiting and happening. All of these ideas depend on time already being present. Without space-time, they have no place to rest. The universe does not hide an earlier chapter. It may simply begin where chapters become possible at all. This idea can feel unsettling at first, because the mind likes continuity. We are used to sequences, to one thing leading gently into another. But space-time reminds us that not every structure needs a past in the way we imagine it. Some things simply are, without a before, without a preparation. Their existence is the starting point. There is something quietly peaceful in allowing this. You do not need to trace everything back endlessly. The universe does not demand that every origin be explained in familiar terms. Space-time offers a beginning that is complete in itself, without requiring a deeper layer beneath it. As you listen, let this thought feel like a soft horizon rather than a wall. Beyond it, questions dissolve, not because they are forbidden, but because they no longer apply. The mind can rest here, at the edge where wondering gently fades into acceptance. Just as we wonder about beginnings, we also wonder about endings. Can space-time come to a close? Can the flow of distance and duration simply stop? Science explores these possibilities carefully, without urgency, offering reminders that endings need not be abrupt or dramatic. Some visions imagine space-time stretching forever, growing thinner and quieter as galaxies drift farther apart. Others suggest a slow cooling, where energy spreads evenly and change becomes rare. In these futures, space-time does not break or vanish. It settles. Motion fades into stillness. Time continues, but with fewer events to mark its passage. There are also ideas of collapse where space-time might one day curve back into itself. Even here, the image need not be violent. It can be imagined as a gradual return, a slow closing rather than a sudden end. Space-time follows its rules patiently, whatever direction those rules allow. What matters most is not which future is correct, but how gently these possibilities unfold. None of them require panic. None of them suggest urgency. Space-time has always moved slowly, shaping the universe over immense durations. If it changes its course, it will do so with the same calm consistency. As you rest, allow the question of endings to feel distant and untroubling. Tonight does not ask for cosmic conclusions. It offers only this moment, this quiet awareness, held comfortably within space-time's steady flow. In trusting that the universe knows how to carry itself, the mind can let go, knowing that rest is always available, regardless of how large the questions become. When we think about time, it often feels personal. A minute can feel long or short depending on how we feel. Waiting stretches time. Joy seems to compress it. This is human time shaped by emotion, attention and memory. Cosmic time, by contrast, moves with a vast calm, marking the slow evolution of stars, galaxies and space-time itself. Both are real. They simply operate at different scales. Space-time does not privilege one experience of time over another. The seconds counted by atomic clocks, and the moments felt by a restless mind are equally valid expressions of duration. One is measured by repetition, the other by meaning. Cosmic time unfolds over billions of years, while human time unfolds in heartbeats and breaths. Space-time holds them both without tension. There is comfort in knowing that your personal sense of time is not a flaw or a distraction from reality. It is part of reality. The universe allows time to be experienced, not just measured. Your perception of slowness or speed is not separate from space-time, but one of the ways space-time becomes lived. As you rest, notice how your sense of time begins to soften. The future loses its urgency, the past loosens its detail. What remains is a gentle present, wide enough to hold awareness without effort. In this moment, human time and cosmic time briefly align, both moving quietly, both asking nothing from you except presence. Waiting has a way of stretching time. A few minutes can feel endless when attention is fixed on what has not yet arrived. This stretching is not an illusion. It is a real feature of how consciousness interacts with space-time. When the mind anticipates, it fills moments with expectation, and those moments feel heavier, longer, more pronounced. Space-time itself does not change during waiting. Seconds pass as they always do, but experience changes. Attention magnifies each moment, giving it weight. In this way, time becomes textured by awareness. The more tightly we hold it, the slower it seems to move. There is a quiet lesson here. When attention softens, time softens with it. Moments flow more easily when they are not watched too closely. This is why time often seems to pass quickly when the mind is at ease, and slowly when it is tense. Space-time provides the structure, but the mind shapes the feeling. As you prepare for sleep, notice how waiting begins to dissolve. There is nothing ahead that needs to arrive, nothing you are counting down to. Without anticipation, time gently releases its grip, returning to a smooth, unremarkable flow. Allow yourself to stop waiting. This moment is enough. Space-time continues its steady rhythm regardless, and you are free to rest within it, letting time move without needing to notice each step it takes. At some point, without effort, it becomes clear that we are not standing outside space-time. Observing it from a distance, we are inside it. Every thought, every breath, every small sensation unfolds within its gentle structure. There is no edge where space-time ends and you begin. The boundary is softer than that. You are part of the flow you are trying to understand. This realization does not need to feel dramatic. It can feel ordinary, even comforting. Just as a fish does not need to think about water in order to swim, you do not need to analyze space-time in order to live within it. It supports you quietly, carrying moments forward without asking for attention or effort. When you stop resisting the flow, something subtle changes. Time no longer feels like something to manage. Space no longer feels like something to cross. Experience becomes lighter, less demanding. Space-time is no longer a puzzle to solve, but a medium to rest in, like air around the body or silence around a sound. As you lie here listening, notice how little you need to do to remain held. Gravity supports you. Time moves on without instruction. Space gives you room to breathe. None of this requires your involvement. Space-time has been doing this work long before you are aware of it, and it will continue without interruption. Let this understanding settle gently. You're not late, you're not early, you're exactly where and when you need to be. In resting inside the flow, the mind can release its effort to control, allowing awareness to drift naturally, supported by the same structure that carries stars and galaxies through the quiet night. If space-time is the stage on which events unfold, consciousness is the place where those events are felt. The present moment, the now, is where space-time becomes experience. It is not a location you can point to, and not a duration you can measure. It is a thin, living surface where awareness meets time. Physics does not assign special status to the present. All moments exist within space-time structure. Past, present, and future are laid out together, connected by relationships rather than flowing one after another. Yet consciousness experiences them differently. It touches one moment at a time, giving the now a unique intimacy. This does not mean the present is an illusion. It means it is an experience rather than a coordinate. The now is where meaning gathers, where sensations appear, where thoughts arise and fade. It is where space-time becomes personal, even tender. As you listen, notice how narrow and gentle the present feels. It does not demand anything. It does not stretch far into memory or anticipation. It simply holds this breath, this sound, this quiet awareness. In this narrowness, there is rest. You do not need to expand the present or hold on to it. It renews itself continuously, moment by moment, without effort. Space-time offers an endless supply of nows, each one fresh, each one sufficient. Let yourself settle fully into this one. Nothing else is required. The universe is already doing the work of unfolding time. Consciousness only needs to meet it softly and then let go again and again, as each now gently gives way to the next. The present moment often feels solid, as if it has thickness and weight. Yet when we look closely, it reveals itself as something delicate, almost transparent. The now is not a block of time you can hold. It is a thin horizon, a gentle boundary where what has been meets what is becoming. Space-time offers this boundary endlessly, refreshing it without effort. In physics, a horizon is not a wall. It is a limit of access, a place where information changes how it can move. The present is similar. The past can no longer be influenced. The future has not yet arrived. The now is where influence still exists, where experience can still form. It is narrow, but it is enough. This thinness is not a weakness. It is what makes experience possible. If the present were wide and heavy, awareness would be crowded by too much at once. Instead, the now arrives gently, carrying just enough sensation, just enough thought, just enough feeling to be lived fully and then released. Space-time seems to favour this economy, offering moments that are complete without being overwhelming. Notice how quickly the present renews itself. You do not need to push it forward. You do not need to catch up. Each moment quietly steps aside for the next, like waves reaching the shore and retreating without conflict. The horizon keeps moving, but never far. It remains close, intimate, always available. There is a quiet relief in trusting this process. You do not need to store the present or protect it. You do not need to worry about missing it. Space-time will deliver another now immediately, and then another, and another, as long as awareness continues. Even as you drift towards sleep, the present does not disappear. It softens. As you rest, allow the now to become very thin. Let it lose its edges. There is nothing to do inside it, nothing to decide. The horizon can blur. Awareness can float. Space-time continues its steady offering of moments, and you're free to meet them lightly, or not at all, letting sleep arrive as simply another gentle crossing. As the universe grows quieter in the mind, a final kind of question begins to appear. Does space-time need to be observed in order to exist? Or does it continue, complete and whole, whether or not anything is there to notice it? The question is gentle, not urgent, and it does not demand an answer. In everyday life, observation feels important. We notice changes. We mark time. We give meaning to moments by paying attention to them. It can be tempting to imagine that without observers, space-time would lose its structure, as if awareness were required to hold it in place. Yet the universe offers no sign of such dependence. Stars formed long before there were eyes to see them. Galaxies collided before there were minds to remember the event. Space-time unfolded patiently regardless. Physics supports this quiet independence. The equations that describe space-time do not include observers as a requirement. Distances curve, time stretches, light follows its paths whether or not anyone is watching. The universe does not pause to check if it is being noticed. It simply continues, steady and consistent, holding events in their proper relations. And yet, observation adds something else, something softer. It does not create space-time, but it brings experience into it. Awareness does not hold the universe together, but it allows the universe to be felt. When you notice a moment, space-time becomes intimate. When you stop noticing, it remains complete. Both states are allowed. There is a quiet freedom in realizing this. You do not need to witness everything. You do not need to stay alert for reality to function. The universe is not waiting for your attention. It is already whole. This means you are free to rest, free to let awareness fade without fear of missing something essential. As you drift closer to sleep, allow this thought to settle gently. Whether you're awake or asleep, attentive or unaware, space-time continues its calm work. Moments still unfold, distances still hold, time still flows. You're not responsible for keeping reality in motion. Tonight, you're allowed to step back. The universe does not require your vigilance. It will continue quietly, faithfully, while you rest inside it, supported without effort, carried without observation, drifting naturally towards stillness. Imagine, for a moment, a universe entirely without observers, no eyes to look, no minds to wonder, no memory to record what has happened. Stars still burn, galaxies still drift, space-time still stretches, curves, and connects events exactly as before. Nothing essential is missing. The universe does not grow dimmer without attention. It simply continues. This thought can feel lonely at first, but it does not need to be. A universe without witnesses is not empty or meaningless. It is complete in its own way. Meaning does not have to be assigned to exist. Space-time does not require appreciation to function. It carries events with the same care whether or not anyone notices. There is something quietly reassuring here. It means the universe is not fragile. It does not depend on constant awareness to hold together. You do not need to stay awake to keep time moving forward. You do not need to understand space-time for it to support you. It has always done its work silently, reliably, without supervision. In this imagined universe, moments still pass into one another. Distances still hold their relationships. Causes still lead to effects. The story continues, even if no one is listening. And when observers do appear, when awareness flickers on briefly, the universe does not change its rules. It simply allows itself to be experienced. As you rest, let this idea release any lingering sense of responsibility. You're not required to witness everything. You're allowed to disappear into sleep. The universe will not notice your absence, and that is a kindness. It means you are free to let go completely. Space-time will continue to unfold, calm and steady, whether you're aware of it or not. Tonight, you can trust that continuity. You can drift into rest knowing that nothing depends on your vigilance. The universe is strong enough to carry itself, and gentle enough to carry you too. We began with a simple question that turned out not to be simple at all. What really is space-time made of? Along the way, we touched many possibilities: a fabric, a geometry, information, relationships, a story of events gently ordered. Each idea offered clarity, and each dissolved into mystery when held too tightly. Perhaps this is the quiet lesson space-time offers, that some questions are not meant to be closed, but to be lived with. Space-time may not be made of a single substance or layer. It may be made of structure itself, of consistent relationships that allow moments to exist at all. Or it may be something even softer, something that does not fit comfortably into the idea of made of in the first place. What matters is not arriving at a final answer, but noticing how the question changes us. It slows us down. It loosens certainty. It invites humility. In wondering about space-time, we practice resting inside uncertainty without fear. We learn that not knowing can be gentle. As you listen now, the question no longer needs to stay sharp. It can blur at the edges, like stars seen through half-closed eyes. You do not need to hold on to the images or the ideas. They have done their work. They have guided you towards stillness. space-time remains what it has always been, quietly supporting every moment, including this one. Whether it is made of fabric, information, or something beyond language, it continues to hold distance and duration together with effortless care. You can let the question fade now. You have carried it far enough. Ahead is not an answer, but rest. There is a moment, often late at night, when understanding itself begins to feel unnecessary. Not wrong, just heavy. The mind realizes that it does not need to grasp the universe in order to rest inside it. This is where understanding softens into something else, something quieter. Perhaps understanding has always been a kind of gentle illusion, useful for navigating the world, but not required for belonging within it. Space-time does not ask to be understood. It does not wait for comprehension before it unfolds. It holds events, moments, and lives with the same calm consistency, whether they are studied, named, or completely ignored. The universe is not improved by our explanations. It is simply accompanied by them for a while. When we seek understanding, we often imagine it as a destination, a place where questions stop and certainty begins. But with space-time, understanding feels more like a temporary resting point along the way. We pause, look around, feel oriented, and then move on. The pause is helpful, but it is not permanent, and that is okay. There is relief in letting this be true. You do not need to solve space-time tonight. You do not need to hold its structure in your mind. Whatever understanding you reached is enough, and whatever remains unclear is not a problem. The universe does not keep score. As you lie here, allow explanations to loosen their grip. Let concepts fade into impressions. Let impressions soften into feeling. Understanding can step aside now. Space-time will continue to carry you whether or not you're thinking about it. In releasing the need to know, the mind finds space to rest, and that rest is deeper than certainty ever was. In the end, space-time remains gently mysterious. It stretches and curves. It orders moments. It allows beginnings without edges and futures without urgency. It does all of this quietly without asking for recognition. And within that vast, patient structure, you have been resting all along. There is nothing more to resolve. The question that began this journey no longer needs to be answered. It has done its work by slowing you down, by opening space in the mind where effort can dissolve. Mystery is not a failure of understanding. It is a place of rest. As sleep approaches, space-time does not change. It continues to hold distance and duration together, offering one moment after another, even as awareness fades. You do not fall out of the universe when you fall asleep. You sink more deeply into it. Let the images drift away now. Let the ideas loosen and scatter like light dimming at dawn. You're supported by something vast and calm, something that does not need a name or a definition to be real. Space-time carries you without effort, just as it carries stars and silence alike. There is nowhere you need to go, no thought you need to finish. The flow continues on its own, steady and kind. Everything flows. Sleep in that motion,